other universities in Indonesia, such as Universitas Hasanuddin in Makassar. The collaboration has several components. The first component is a research collaboration on climate change and sustainable development. We focus on the 4 themes. The first one is impacts of climate change on planetary and human health, sustainable landscape management, energy transition, and increasing the resilience of small islands in Eastern Indonesia. This research collaboration component aims at enhancing the science to policy principle. Therefore, we have included various stakeholders to the research, national and local government, private sectors, NGOs, and communities. The second component is the capacity building. The third is student mobility between Australia and Indonesia. And the fourth one is the high-level dialogues and a series of webinars. Today's event is under this component. Now I'd like to explain some housekeeping rules to make sure that we have an enjoyable session and a meaningful discussions. The participants don't have to fill in any attendance list. We will have attendance report from Zoom, so you can just focus on the materials. You can write down your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box, Q&A box. We usually receive a lot of questions. It is challenging for us to answer all, but we will do our best. Make sure that you read the existing questions first before you write down your own, just in case it has similarity with yours, and then you can just upvote it by clicking the thumbs up icon. For YouTube viewers, you can also write down your questions in the chat section. Our team will move it to the Q&A box in the Zoom to ensure that it can be seen by the other participants at Zoom to be upvoted. The chair will focus on the most popular questions with the most upvote or the most relevant to the discussion at that moment. The presentation materials can be downloaded in our Google Drive account, and we will share the link at the end of this webinar, so don't worry. Information about the request for certificates will be shared in the end of the webinar, so stay tuned. We also conduct poll today, quite a lot of questions, but I hope all of you can participate by answering the questions, and we will share the result later. It will be interesting. Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, before we start the discussion, I would like to say that now I'm wearing red and white, and I also have flags here. Because 2 days ago, Indonesia celebrated its 75th Independence Day. So Dirgahayu Indonesia, happy birthday for Indonesia, and we are still in the spirit of that. So before we start the discussion, I think it would be great to have some insights of our topic as well as a reflection of our 75th birthday, because this person has been witnessing the Independence Day back in 1945. So I think most of you know him already, especially from Indonesia, which is Pak Rahmat Bitular. He is the former Indonesian President's Special Envoy for Climate Change, former Indonesian Minister of Environment, and former Executive Chair of the Indonesian National Council on Climate Change. Pak Rahmat has held the presidency position in the United Nations Environment Programme Governing Council, and then also he was the president of COP13 of UNFCCC in Bali in 2007. He was Indonesia's ambassador to the Russian Federation, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Mongolia back in the 90s, and a longtime member of the Indonesian Parliament since 1971 until 1993. That's when even my mom and dad even met. Before they met. And he is currently an adjunct professor in environmental management from Griffith University, Australia, advisor of Institute for Sustainable Earth and Resources, the organization that I'm currently work for, and patron of CAIPSDCC. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Prof. Rahmat Bitular. Pak Rahmat. Hopefully, Pak Rahmat can unmute the mic and then also show the video.
Start my video. Okay.
Yes, great.
Hi. Thank you, Leah. And I'm sorry there was a lot of time wasted words in introducing myself. You didn't have to read all my CV. Well, anyway, hello. Welcome to all the panelists, Pak Jarso, Medrilzam, and all our friends, and welcome to the participants to this very important webinar. Today we will be talking about a very important topic, which is very fitting for today's problems. And we have had problems. In a span of 4.5 minutes, I would like to give you an insight of what we have to do. If we talk about the problems today, we are trying to make realization of the what we call the sustainable development. And for that, we have to develop ourselves in the economy with a sustainable development, which involves energy, but energy it doesn't come cheap. So this is very appropriate that our webinar is talking about alternative funding for development. If I see Medrilzam, he was working on the LCDI, the Low Carbon Development Initiative. So this is a continuation of that. So I just in short, today I see that this COVID actually is only a derivation of the climate change threat that we have been threatened by. So the important thing that we to solve this problem is we have to work together to also to solve the climate problems, and that is why we have to have alternative energies. I would say that today we have the double pandemic, with first the pandemic of the climate change and the pandemic of the coronavirus. But also we need two solutions. This is alternative energy and alternative funding for those energies. That is why I see that the panelists here are a variety of people, experts in finance and also in the organization of the UN. I see Cookie there. She will enlighten you to what we have been doing, trying to do to overcome the climate change. So the fossil fuels cannot be there. Today, I would like, I'm very interested in listening to the solutions on the questions of problems. What is alternative funding? One of first is the traditional funding is just somebody pays something and it is put to use. But today, we recognize that there are markets that we can go to. Just a while ago, the OJK, the Otorita Jasa Keuangan, has issued a green bond. Maybe that's a fund market. The parliament probably will issue, by not soon, maybe some kind of carbon tax. And then again, how do we go around crowdfunding? So many alternative forms of funding is available for the use of to develop the sustainable growth and the low carbon development growth. So I'm very eager to hear what you have to say. And for that, I want to appreciate what Leah and Dita and Handika, the one who is promoting this webinar. In the name of all of us, I would like to extend our gratitude. Thank you and have a good and productive discussion. Good morning, all.
Thank you very much, Pak Rahmat Witular, for being here with us. Pak Rahmat is the initiator as well for CAIPSDCC, so we are very grateful to have our last webinar session with you here right now. So I hope you can stay on. Later, maybe there's some question for you as well. Okay, move on. We are going to get to know more about our wonderful chair today, Ibu Gita Shahrani, or Kakak, or Gita. So she is the Executive Director to the Secretariat of Sustainable District Association, or Lingkar Temu Kabupaten Lestari, LPKL. Using the collective impact approach, this innovative district partnership intends to accelerate and better support the district's sustainable vision aligned with Sustainable Development Goals, Indonesia's emission reduction targets, and open government principle. With more than a decade of legal financing structure and strategic management consulting and program implementation experience, Gita is a sustainability professional focusing on climate change and green investment. She was the senior program management for the Indonesia Palm Oil Pledge, or IPOP, and a leading member of the planning and funding deputy of the former National Red Plus Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to give a warm welcome for Kakak Gita.
Thank you, Kalia. It's our thing, ladies and gentlemen. Usually we used to call each other kakak because nobody wants to admit they're older than the other. So good morning, everyone. Like Leah explained, I'm also wearing red and white. See, and this is also to honor the 75th anniversary of our beloved nation, and hopefully the next 75 years would be even greater, and we will achieve even better results. And but in order to achieve that, we believe that the essence that is also reflected in the panel today is a collaborative collective actions, where government is not working alone. We also get support from civil society. We also get support from academia. We also get support from private sector. And of course, the hope is that we also get support from the general public, such as the participants today. Very happy to look at the chat box. It's coming from all over the world, all over Indonesia, from Australia, from Japan, from all the way in South Kalimantan, in Papua, in Kupang. So welcome everyone, and we will have a great session today. We have quite a balanced perspective as well, coming from people that have been following this important journey of low carbon development for a while now. Lots of them are people that I quoted during my thesis day. So they are for sure the front runner of who will answer the hard question of where is all the funding going to come from when it comes to low carbon development. And I'm going to say hi to everyone, to all of the panelists. First, we got Pak Medrilzam. He is one of the busiest men right now. We're so lucky to have him this morning. Hi, Pak Medril.
Halo Mbak Gita, kakak.
Thank you, Pak Medril, for joining us. Then we also have Pak Adi. Pak Adi is here. Hi,
Hello.
Pak Adi. Good
Hello.
morning.
Good morning.
Also as busy, so thank you for joining us this morning. We will hear from Pak Adi and more from the financing sector later on during the talk. And we also have John, all the way from Australia. It's an afternoon there already, yeah?
Selamat pagi semuanya.
Oh, selamat pagi, Pak John. Wonderful. He has a surprise for you guys. He will use some Indonesian word later on, yeah? So John will talk us through from the carbon market perspective and how that can be related to Indonesia's and also Australia's future, or even the world's future. Thank you, John. Excited for your talk. And also we have Ibu Kuki. So Bu Kuki has been a climate change negotiator since, I don't know, I was in junior high school or something. So Bu Kuki is also joining us, our panel this morning. Hi, Mbak Kuki. And we will have a response from our wonderful reviewer, Dr. Rob Hales. Hi, Rob.
Hi there.
Hi. All right. We have a complete panel, and we will start the discussion by providing the floor to Pak Medril. They would help us have better context on what would be discussed this morning. We will say hi to also the ones that are joining in YouTube. Hi. Please feel free to also type in your questions in the chat box in YouTube and also the question and answers. So Pak Medrilzam is actually currently a Director of Environmental Affairs in Ministry of National Development Planning, or Bappenas. He's actually one of the champion for low carbon development, and the reason why Indonesia for the first time in history has a flavor of sustainability within its national planning document, which is wonderful. He completed his master in Australia in the University of Queensland, and also his PhD in 2013 on environmental management. He has been serving Bappenas since '93 and also has been appointed in various structural and functional positions. As a Bappenas representative, Pak Medril is also a negotiator, and he has chaired Indonesian delegation in financial climate change negotiations under the UNFCCC. And he is also responsible for very important transactions when it comes to financing climate change effort and also low carbon development. We are excited to hear more from him. If you have questions, he will also be here to entertain it during the discussion. So Pak Medril, the time and floor is yours, 7 minutes, and I'll give you a cue when it's 2 minutes left.
Okay, 7 minutes, yeah. Okay,
Yeah, Pak.
right. Okay, thank you, Kakak Gita. Honorable former ministers of Environment of the Republic of Indonesia and also our President's Special Envoy on Climate Change, Pak Professor Rahmat Pitular, and all colleagues in Indonesia, Australia, Japan, and around the world, good morning and greetings to everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to join you today. And of course, first of all, I'd like to thank also to the University of Indonesia and also Griffith University through this collaborative Australia-Indonesia program on sustainable development and climate change for hosting this such important event. I'd like to start my remark by showing where we are now in relation to our ambitious targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which we know that we have a very ambitious target up to 29% to 41% by 2030. I took these pictures in the slide from our Aksara. Aksara is our government of Indonesia monitoring systems for greenhouse gas emission reductions and low carbon development. And if you can see from the chart that actually I can say that we are still on track. As you may see that the potential emissions and emission intensity reductions by 29%, this is a cumulative figures, have already reached about 23.46 and 20.7% respectively. This achievement, as I mentioned, has already shown that we are still on the right in the right track, pursuing the targets. And in our 5 years development programs from 2020 to 2024, this good achievement actually will be strengthened through what we are going to discuss today, which is the implementations of low carbon development initiatives. However, we know that the COVID-19 has already changed the way of people's life and also our development policies. And in 2020, basically this year, most of our development programs have been shifted and focused to only to the health sector, social safety net, and also to improve our economic stability. Most targets that have been stated in the midterm development plan and also including our yearly development plan cannot be accomplished wholly due to this shifting of priority. And also this includes our low carbon development initiative. Actually, this raised a lot of questions. Actually, I received a lot of questions with regards to, in particular, how then we can maintain the momentum of our climate change initiative that we have already built since a long time ago. And also how then we have to maintain our sustainable development goals that we have already set, including by 2030. I would like to respond to these questions by referring back again to just President Jokowi speech a few days ago, that he explained very clearly that we have to use the momentum of this pandemic to consolidate our plan and jump further ahead to accelerate and transform our business as usual to a better development activity. I believe this is in line with the applications of the concept of Build Back Better that we in Bappenas keep pursuing ahead this concept in conjunction with the implementations of LCDI that has already been planned in our current RPJMN. Build Back Better principle, as you may be aware, actually aiming toward improving our resilience in response to future threat of the crisis. However, we will do this in a smoother transition process. And please change the slide, I think. Although the government's work plan in the Indonesia for 2021 still keeps focusing on accelerating our economic recovery and social reform, however, we revived the implementations of low carbon development through several measures. As you may see in the slide, we have identified that at least there are 9 major projects to support the implementations of low carbon development out of 42 strategic priority projects in 2021. We really hope those LCDI activities in 2021 could show the continuations of strong government willingness to implement low carbon development in Indonesia. To support consolidation activities of LCDI as mandated by our presidents, currently we are in the process of identifying and mapping the existing funding and also programs on low carbon development. We are not only just identified funding from programs of line ministries, but we also identified direct incentive that the government has provided in relation to many activities related to LCDI, such as the subsidy for public transport, geothermal, socio-forestry, and so on. Aiming for implementations of LCDI in 2022, we expect to develop a comprehensive stimulus package on low carbon economy that will be integrated into our annual development plan. And also we keep ensuring the achievement of the target of RPJMN 2020-2024 and also the 23 emission reduction targets. Besides, we will further also pursue the implementations of innovative financings through markets. Actually, right now we are preparing our presidential regulations on this. Of course, the government of Indonesia certainly can't work alone and also can't work in silo to tackle this pandemic and also nourish green recovery platform. We welcome future collaborations on low carbon development and also climate resilience that is more stronger, more strategic, and also sustainable. I thank you for your attention on this meeting. I really would like to discuss with you more on the aspects of this low carbon development, including the funding arrangement for further explorations. Thank you very much. Over back to you again, Mbak Gita.
That was super efficient. You have 1 minute left, Pak. So amazing. Great. Thank you. And that was such a clear opening to give context to the rest of the speaker. Now I'd like to actually invite Pak Adi to give his perspective coming from the financing side, from Ministry of Finance, more specifically, actually the only division that are strictly focused on climate change and how should we go about it in terms of having a strategic planning as a country. Pak Adi is also part of the expert that was leading multilateral sphere and also inspire a lot of the creative policy on sustainable financing and accounting, also on climate change and green growth fiscal side. He is now the head of the Climate Change and Multilateral Policy Center in the Fiscal Policy Agency since 2019. And he is also the acting head of the Center for Financial Sector Policy at the Fiscal Policy Agency of the Ministry of Finance since 2020. He is he's very busy. He is also the chairman of CPA Australia Advisory Committee in Indonesia for 2019-2022. He completed his master's degree in accounting in Southern California in the US, and also his doctorate in University of Canberra. So he will bring a bit of a US flavor and also an Australian flavor also in his speech, combined with his know-how in terms of Indonesian policy. So Pak Adi, let's give the floor to you, and hopefully you can answer all the question on where should we get the financing to accommodate all this wonderful plan that Pak Medril have set out for us. Also 7 minutes, Pak. I'll remind you when 2 minutes left.
All right. Thank you very much, Mbak Gita, Professor Pitolar, and Pak Medrilzam, my friend. I think this is a great honor for us, all of us, to discuss about the topic. And this is quite apparent that this topic is quite hot and become really important, especially for the future generation. Climate finance in Indonesia, I would like to start with the fact that currently the rise of global temperature has led the risk associated with the climate change in the decade. If you can see from my second slides, the Indonesia vulnerability due to the impact of the climate change is quite apparent. Yeah, almost 80% or more. The climate change is believed to increase the risk of hydrometeorological disasters, and that was comprising not only cyclones, floods, landslide, drought, and high wave and abrasion. So the risk is really clear, and this is scary. Our concern about climate change in Indonesia, basically climate change is indisputably apparent, and studies indicate that the occurrence of the global warming acceleration exists. Climate-related risks associated with the natural and human system are higher, for global warming. For example, now we are reaching towards 1.5 degrees Celsius or potentially more, but we should limit up to 2 degrees. The graph shows that the increase of the global temperature from 1960 to 2000, which indicates the likeliness of the temperature, is really apparent, and this is the climate-related associated with the disaster is there. The problem is, do we believe with it or not? So now Indonesia is part of the coalition of the finance minister in climate actions, and we do hope that all of the countries currently should think or rethink about how then we can react properly. The second slides, or the third slides in my presentation, is actually lay down the clear or bold apparent of Indonesia's support for the global actions. I think climate change is the global risk, and we should do the global action to properly manage this. As you can also see in the graph, Indonesia also committed for the inputted or put this into the law, which is in 2016. By 2030, Indonesia should reach the 29% unconventional emission reduction and up to 41% with the international commitment or international partnership. If we can see from the bottom, the most significant reduction for carbon, we should aim it from forestry, from energy transportation, waste, agriculture, and industrial and production use. This is actually not only the number, because behind the number, we have the cultural challenges, in addition to the subnational and national commitment. Indonesia is a really big country. We have 75,000 islands, and we are mixed of island and the sea or water, which is that will be creating another challenges. But for sure, Indonesia is committed. And how then we can or try to gather more commitment from not only government, but also from private sector, subnational government, and also all other stakeholders. If we would like to lead into the apparent ambition for the sustainable development as well. So this will become the ultimate target for all of us. You know, Indonesia committed to do what we so-called climate budget tagging. So that means we would like to signify the project within the government national budget. It's comprising not only 7, but more. We do hope will be continuing from 2016 up until now. And starting from this year, we should focus our budget tagging to the subnational level. So we are already collaborating with 11 subnational level local government that we should commit it to how we can try to insert the green project or the green activities into our budget. So in doing so, finally, government has also another opportunities for the innovative financing source. Global Sukuk, what we so call it. Now Indonesia run to the third issuance of the Global Sukuk. And this will become another journey of Indonesia to cater to more commitment to reach the budget needed for supporting the commitment of NDC. If you can see from the graph in the middle, the energy and transportation is actually portraying the real big gap need for the financing source, which is 236 billion US dollar out of 240, yeah? Almost the biggest chunk of the number that we should collect every single year. If you can see it in the annual budget, for example, the total need to support the biennial update report is actually, the gap is the real need is actually 266 trillion trillion rupiah, and our budget from tagging that we can see every single year is only almost 100 trillion US dollar. That means we still have 150 trillion rupiah per year. That means almost double or triple our current budget. So how then we should filling the gap? Now the government is committed to do the budget. So another of to the local. That's why we should also elaborate or committed to collaborate with the local government to support the financing needs gap. Second, we would like to also invite the private sector, social NGO, and then also the philanthropists. So the next challenge on the finance option for Indonesia is actually not only from the public, but also from the private. These are some of the instruments that we currently try to embrace all of them through various channels. I will tell you a bit some of the focus on this, but for sure the climate finance option up until now, next slides. If you can see from this, this is the picture of our current budget. So we're now collecting almost every single year 2%, 2.9 to 4.9%, which is equivalent of the 100 trillion rupiah per year. That means if we would like to lay down the total budget that we still need the cap, so we still have to double or triple our commitment. Yeah. How then we try to link to that potential huge gap? Now, Ministry of Finance currently, my office, is the NDA for Green Climate Fund. What is Green Climate Fund? Green Climate Fund is the probably biggest currently global funds that are committed by most of the global countries. We are available almost 10 to 20 billion US dollar fund ready to be channeled through several countries like Indonesia. How to tap into these funds? My office as NDA, we currently try to liaise most of the project. We already accumulated more than 40 projects currently. So we try to engage with all accredited entity. So currently Indonesia collaborate with most of the MDBs in Indonesia. We have more than 10. And we also competed for some of the local partners like PT SMI, some of the
Hai Pak Adi.
Sorry, lost the connection. Okay, so yeah. Yes, okay. We try to give you more example about the GCF project in Indonesia. We have 4 key currently project that we currently working with our team. The first is on the readiness of the NDA office. We collaborate with the GGGI grant. It is already grant committed, and we have been engaging for more than 2 years from now. And then we have also Geothermal Resource Risk Mitigation Facility, GRAM, which is that collaboration between NDA and the World Bank. The next slide, please. And also with the PTSMI, we collaborate with the local, the subnational level government, which is Semarang, to support the bus rapid transit. And we also collaborate with FMO for the Climate Investor One potential contribution and partner with the NDA in Jakarta. Another climate finance options that we currently engage is the Indonesia Blended Finance One. We call it SDG Indonesia One. This is the modalities how then Ministry of Finance through PTSMI, our special mission vehicle under Ministry of Finance, try to collaborate with donor, potential commercial support, and also institutional investors. So the contribution is actually to provide SDG development facilities, de-risking facilities, as well as financing and equity financing. So with this, Ministry of Finance will collaborate with all of the line ministries that in line with this aim. The next potential support for funding as well, we already indicated before, Green Sukuk as potential climate funding in Indonesia. Currently, Green Sukuk or bonds Sukuk issuance has been successful in terms of we collaborating as well with the Bappenas to at least list it or acknowledge this into our financing source of fund for the national government project. This actually one of the significant progress after we do the budget taking. So with this,
just a kind reminder, there's 2 minutes left.
All right. Okay. Next. So the Green Sukuk allocation can be also further become potential for the partnership with the local government as well. And last but not least, I would like to jump into my last presentation, I do believe. Some of the information actually already in the website. Last but not least, I would like to emphasize our current work. So Ministry of Finance, currently we are working in our initiative to develop what's so-called climate change fiscal framework. This is my last slide before terima kasih. I think this is really important that I would like to emphasize how then the government would like to ask on all of the stakeholders to do what's so-called budgetary policy framework for the long run, in the future. This is actually the fiscal tool and how then through market mechanism to collaboration with the relevant stakeholders, this one, and links between the fiscal policy and SDGs commitment through the several or various multiple financing channel. And also this will also emphasize the weaknesses and skill gap as well to support the government to lay down most of the road from now on towards next 2030. So we do hope Ministry of Finance will be part of the coalition or part of the whole of government to tackle the climate risk and also improve the potential to collect and distribute the potential fundings for or to support the NDC commitment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pak Adi. If the keyword from Pak Medril was just transition, the keyword from Pak Adi was actually focusing on very much bringing all of the stakeholders together. So not only relying on public mechanism, but also looking at innovative mechanics like sukuk, the different type of fund that are available out there, the private sector contribution, but also looking at coalition building all over the world. So we really hope that the plan that he presented is something that we can look forward for as a nation. Now we will give the floor, because Pak Adi already gave us a really nice segue to talk about market mechanics. We are quite honored to also have John joining us today, and he will take us through much more from the market perspective and how can this actually be part of a reliable financing source for a country like Indonesia and also Australia. A little bit of a background about John. He is joining us from Australia, to be precise. Which city, John?
Sydney.
in Sydney. Great. He is the CEO of Carbon Market Institute that brings over 25 years of experience working in both public and business policy with a focus on climate, sustainability, and development. He joined CMI following the successful conclusion of 2 years as Executive Director of the Vision Government's COP23 Presidency Secretariat. And in that role, John managed the Secretariat's strategic, logistic, and policy support functions as Fiji presided over the UNFCCC negotiation. John is well known across Australia from his previous decade-long role as the CEO of the Climate Institute, overseeing its focus on national policy, institutional investors, and international climate diplomacy. So a really complete package here, experience from the government side, working in public policy, private sector side, but also civil society and a think tank experience. So hopefully you'll help us make every single plan that Pak Medril and Pak Adi have set out to come true, John.
No pressure. Well, thank you. And say selamat pagi semuanya. And also, I think I get this right, Dirgahayu, Indonesia. Happy
Yes, perfect. Dirgahayu, Indonesia. Thank you.
I did 1 year of a few months of Indonesian in year 7. So thank you, but really honoured to be part of the discussion today and such esteemed speakers who have come before me. So I want to talk about my organisation, but also in particular a focus on nature-based climate investment, but then conclude with some broader observations. First of all, for those of you who don't know, the Carbon Market Institute, it's an independent industry association for business leading the transition to net zero emissions. We have over 80 companies across the span of the carbon value chain. So that are companies who are doing the investments in the carbon reduction, working in the Asia Pacific in carbon projects, and doing tree planting, restoration, emission reductions, all the way through to the emissions intensive companies, BHP, Woodside, BP, Shell, and others. And CMI is 3 things. We're an industry association that does the normal things of an industry association. We have the big Australasian Emission Reduction Summit coming up in December, most likely virtual. A range of other forums and working groups and the like. Secondly, and importantly, we see ourselves as stewards of carbon markets. And in Australia, there's 3 kinds of those. One is a compliance market. Unfortunately, at the moment, relatively small. It was larger when we had a domestic cap and trade scheme for a couple of years, working effectively, and one which could have been linked in diplomacy and investment to regional markets, but there may still be potential in future. Second, we have a voluntary market which at the moment is very much dominated by the government's fund, which we call the Emission Reduction Fund, soon to be Climate Solutions Fund, which does significant investment and purchase of emission reductions, the majority of which today has been land-based, but we're seeking to spread that into other industrial processes. And then there's an emerging business-to-business marketplace where we're seeing companies putting a premium on zero carbon or low carbon products, such as Apple purchasing zero carbon aluminium, as a range of other examples in terms of, say, building products, for example, as well. Within that stewardship, we have a particular focus with the land base, where we run the world's first carbon industry code of conduct. So we're trying to have a low cost but full integrity scheme of a good conduct for the industry. And we also have generated a carbon farming industry roadmap. So there are a range of ways in which we work to be a steward of the market. Finally, we are a champion of the Paris Agreement and the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, key implements and instruments there if we're to avoid keep warming well below 2 degrees and hopefully 1.5 degrees warming. Now, when it comes to Indonesia, obviously, and we heard earlier, quite a focus on energy and industrial needs, but also that the strong emission reductions in your goals also need to come from forestry and agriculture. And I think it's important to recognise that Indonesia already has a high level of abatement for nature-based projects. Some over 14 million carbon credits have been awarded to or contracted to nature-based projects in Indonesia, and indeed you're the second highest in the Asia Pacific region, just behind Australia, partly because of that, and Australia particularly because of carbon farming initiatives and the government spending, as I've just outlined. There's 5 particular projects there in Indonesia which drive much of that, and they're in peatland restoration and conservation, mangrove restoration, peat swamp and forest ecosystem with REDD+, some biodiversity reserve, and another peatland project, all with Vera. So indeed, you're actually the 5th largest worldwide in those projects, and still great potential. We know that investors are interested in Indonesia for its high abatement potential, and it's attractive there, but there are significant challenges. There's issues in terms of lack of historical baseline data, the time it's taken for a project to be set up, which is also racing against the rapid rates of deforestation, etc. For companies and other investors, there are factors there of considerations in terms of the irrecoverable carbon ecosystems and indeed last chance ecosystems, which are significant for providing habitat there, and so that they are examples of which Indonesia has many. There are also, when we come to these nature-based carbon projects, and important for a range of the potential investors, a significant number of co-benefits there, which can be leveraged to speed up these projects, particularly as we look to combine these economic goals with COVID recovery plans and the broader goals on climate repair. And Dr. Budiaso was very eloquent in talking to ways in which we need to take this opportunity to combine these goals. So it is important to see that those extra benefits, nature or social or biodiversity benefits are attractive for a range of the players which you need to be focusing on. Perhaps some of the harder heads in the institutional investors aren't necessarily looking so much at co-benefits, but institutional banks, emissions intensive, the big companies, governments and others are certainly looking for those extra incentives. Now, so I think that actually provides a significant opportunity to link those extra benefits there to actually speed up some of that economic investment and climate repair. So there are examples, for example, in impact investments where you might have, there's an example of in Asia of a $1.4 billion investment in sustainable agriculture that also has carbon and biodiversity investments. $5 billion investment in natural capital with biodiversity and food security outcomes. A range of other fair trade plantations for coffee and other examples. I think there's significant potential to leverage the Australia-Indonesia diplomatic partnership as well as business partnerships to join in carbon markets in the future. We are partners together in a blue carbon partnership, also in the rainforest partnership. And there is a potential to link and evolve our own carbon markets in Australia that we do have with the compliance and voluntary to enable them in their carbon credit generation to actually link internationally and particularly in the Asia-Pacific region over time as we grow ambition and grow the Paris Agreement and how that is implemented. We certainly, the Carbon Market Institute, are very keen to see that evolve and have been advocating for the Australian government, for example, to be working and investing in pilot projects in Article 6 to encourage countries across the Asia Pacific to be ready to be investing and participating in the shared effort that we need to be taking under the Paris Agreement to get the climate emission reductions we need to be achieving. Finally, I just wanted to,
John, just a kind reminder, 1 minute left.
Okay, well, look, let me conclude then. I think it's important to reflect that there are some 99 global dedicated funds that the OECD has listed, 74 of those in the Asia Pacific. It's important to think about the range of players that are there. I listed a few of those earlier: the institutional investors, there's commercial banks, the emissions intensive companies, project development organisations and philanthropic players, and a range of ways of mechanisms that each of which have different characteristics that need to be followed through, from bonds, carbon finance, blended financing, equity grants, as well as our overseas aid. So each of those have some work to focus on. We hope to be publishing some research on this in coming months, but happy to take some questions in the Q&A session. So thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute, and look forward to the Q&A.
Great, thank you, John. It's quite exciting to hear that we are actually the second highest potential on right now in Asia Pacific for nature-based solution, carbon related, and also the 5th largest in the world. Yeah, excited to hear more on that during the Q&A. I'd like to remind all participants to please vote your favorite questions in the Q&A box. If you got a lot of votes, then we can answer it live. The panelists can answer it live. And also a kind reminder for those of you that haven't filled out our polling, this is questions that are submitted by the panelists to you, so that we can also give insights to the panelists from all of the participants that joined us today. Please do vote right now. We will have until the end of the session to keep voting. There's around 9 questions. It's not a test. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But just to welcome my personal idol, Mbak Kuki Syujahmun. Mbak Kuki is actually the former assistant to the President's Special Envoy for Climate Change, Pak Rahmat, from 2010 until 2019. So almost a decade, yeah, Mbak Kuki. Yeah. She is also a senior climate negotiator for the Indonesian government and co-lead negotiator for Article 6 of Paris Agreement that John also described earlier. She graduated from the Department of Environmental Engineering, Institute Technology of Bandung, and pursued her study at the Environmental Engineering and Sustainable Infrastructure Program at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. She has previously worked as the Executive Director of Pelangi Indonesia, a non-governmental organization. This is also an organization that, for me personally, introduced me to the whole carbon setting. So from way back when, right? And in 2013 to 2015, Mbak Kuki served as the secretary to the Working Group on International Negotiation for the National Council on Climate Change. So Mbak Kuki will enlighten us, also hopefully to give us some insights on what is possible for future partnership, not only within Indonesia as a country, but as John mentioned, the bigger international negotiation potential between Australia and Indonesia, or Indonesia with other countries. So time and floor is yours, Mbak Kuki. Also 7 minutes. I'll remind you when there's 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you so much, Gita. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I just joined like a couple of minutes ago from another meeting. But I think, and I don't have any presentation, by the way, but I will try to share some of my views also on this issue on the financing for low carbon future for us. I think earlier, Pak Medril as well as Pak Adi already presented to us what is it from the government side? Unfortunately, we don't have anyone representing the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, because it would be interesting also to see it from the other perspective, which is focusing on the climate issues, focusing on the emission reduction, and especially under the current Paris Agreement, then it will also be focusing more on the achievement of the NDC. But anyway, if we are talking about low carbon future, then it has a lot to do also with our effort to achieve our NDC target, especially in mitigation actions, right? And therefore, it is important also for Indonesia to understand options for financing our activities, like the one that Pak Medril as well as Pak Adi mentioned earlier. There are a number of initiatives currently by the government, either already in implementation, or also those that are still in the process, including right now, for example, there is an initiative by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry to work on the regulation for how do you call it, the carbon pricing. But I cannot speak more on that because it's still within the ministry, and if we have someone from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, maybe can share more on that. But anyway, if we are talking about low carbon future, about what would we like to see in the future for Indonesia, definitely, like any other country, we have to do it. We cannot do it by ourselves, right? We have to do it in cooperation with other countries, and also with stakeholders. So it's not only the government, because we know that government will have limited resources to conduct all these things, and maybe the priority is not exactly, like not literally the same, even though if we are talking about like a longer future, then it will eventually be the same objective and goals. But if you are looking at what happened and what need to be done, especially under the Paris Agreement, sorry, Pak Medril, I have to refer more on the Paris Agreement, because from the emission reduction perspective, then we need support, and we need actions from all of us. As I know this is not the tagline from climate, but it's the tagline from SDGs, for example. We cannot leave anyone behind. So everyone has to get involved. Everyone has to get the benefit as well. So if we are talking about low carbon future, low carbon development, then we need to get everyone on board. We cannot just rely on national budget or local government budget. We also need to have all other actors to chip in also, both in terms of financing as well as real actions on the ground. And I will just bring it to maybe not to the national level, because we know that we are talking within the national level, then there are a lot of options that we can do also, including like market-based approach for domestic activities, right? So, for example, if eventually the government of Indonesia has how do you call it, emission or set a cap for different activities or different sectors, then those actors in that particular sector will need to do mitigation, will need to reduce their emission, will need to implement something to basically to ensure that their emission is below the cap, right? So there might be another sector or subsectors that already by nature they are low in emission, in greenhouse gases emission, and they can play a role as a supplier to emission reduction to those that have been given the obligation to reduce emission. So this will create domestic market, but to ensure that the domestic market will be how do you call it, effectively implemented, then we need to have the cap. So I think one of the issue that we need to ensure is the cap for our own, for our national players. But there is also a big possibility, as already mentioned by John earlier, that we need to do it like internationally, bilaterally or multilaterally. And this is something that I'm following at the moment. The Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. It's basically the basis for, or the only article within the Paris Agreement that discussing about cooperative between country or international cooperation to reduce emission. Sorry. There are one basic principles is that once we are doing this international cooperation, there is a big possibility that there will be internationally transferred emission reduction or mitigation outcome, and this will affect our NDC target achievement. So I think from that point of view, if we are looking at international cooperation, including regional cooperation or maybe between Indonesia and Australia in this case, then this is something that we need to understand. This is something different with what we have been doing previously under the CDM, for example, or Foreign Development Mechanism, where we as a host party can sell the emission reduction to any other country, and they can use it for their for fulfilling their commitment without any impact for us, because we are not at that time we didn't have any obligation to reduce our emission. But under the Paris Agreement, it's totally different. So everyone has their own commitment and they have to oblige to it. So it means that if in this case under the Paris Agreement, Indonesia will transfer out our emission reduction, then it may have affected our achievement of NDC, depending on the
kind
activity.
Reminder, a minute
1
left.
hour? Yes. 1 hour? No, 1 minute. Okay. So that's I think that is one of the issue that we need to take into account in our planning for any country. I should say, if we are trying to do any cooperation, any market-based cooperation with other countries under the Paris Agreement, then we need to see that there is a potential implication to our achievement of NDC. I should stop there, Gita, and I would be more than happy to answer any question later. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mbak Kuki. That was a great closing sort of in terms of the content that we are discussing. We have a lot of questions. We have around 21 questions, and we will try to go through it one by one, but not all will be selected to be answered live by the panel. We have one of the question with the top vote, reaching all the way to 19 votes in total, so we will answer it live. Before we go into the Q&A session, can I please ask all of the panelists to maybe turn on their videos during the Q&A so that we can be more present in the moment for all of the participants, so they feel that they're really interacting with the panelists. If you can just turn on the video during the Q&A session, that would be great. Anyway, so we'll go to the first question. Basically looking at the vote right now. We have a question from Gracia Paramita. She is a PhD candidate from the University of York. I think some of the panel are familiar with her. So she's Indonesian, right? But she is joining us all the way from the UK. Before we go to that question, we will actually ask the first response to be coming from our colleagues in Griffith University from Dr. Rob Hales. And for those of you that want your favorite questions to be answered live by this wonderful panelist, go and vote now. Go ahead, Pak Rob. The time and floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And considering the large number of questions, I might make this pretty short. Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners on which the land on which I stand now, and also call for actions of reconciliation with Indigenous people throughout the world and whichever nation we come from. As a summary, I think I was thinking we may go through each of the speakers, but I'm thinking because of the large number of questions, I think we may go straight to a bit of a summary point that I'll make, and then we'll hand it back and I'll join in as part of the questions. I think Rahmat's first point, however, I'd like to mention in terms of our speakers, I think the double pandemic idea is very important here. And from where I'm sitting in Australia, with the second wave happening, I'm thinking, you know, when does recovery finish? When does stimulus package finish? And there's a fair bit of uncertainty around, you know, when that actually occurs. The other thing I'd like to mention also, and thank you all the speakers making great contributions to the discussion. One of the interesting things that I've seen in the last couple of months in terms of trying to understand the link between climate change and economic stimulus post-COVID or during COVID is thinking about what the experts have been talking about as to how you can link the two. And there's a really interesting bit of research done by Stern looking at 231 central bank officials and finance ministry officials and other economic experts from the G20 countries and looking at what sort of fiscal recovery actions can actually occur that also address climate change as well as economic recovery. And I'll put the link up in the chat once I finish. But the interesting thing is that if you take into consideration long-term multiplier effects of whatever you're trying to do, it's interesting that these experts who aren't necessarily, you know, champions of climate change, they may be had a background in economics and not necessarily in climate change, but the things that they actually came up with were that both had an impact in climate change in terms of mitigation and adaptation, and also economic recovery were clean physical infrastructure, building efficiency retrofits, investment in education and training, natural capital investment, and clean R&D. And in terms of the lower and middle income countries, these experts said that rural support, regional spending was a particular value, while R&D was less important. So I think it's a really interesting article to give us a bit of guidance as to what the experts in many countries think about how we should tie recovery and climate change. And it does give us a bit of a guidance as to what things might actually go into LDC, low carbon development plans from whichever country you come from. One of the other things I'd like to mention here is just as a final sort of position statement, I think, is an interesting article from Nature recently you may have seen, looking at the role of economic growth to deliver on sustainable development goals. And the article was saying that we may not have to place so much faith in economic growth in the future to be able to reach a lot of these goals. So that's another thing in terms of thinking about financing the link between the recovery and climate, is that it has to be very targeted, because we can't rely on growth to pay back any of the deficits that we're seeing that governments are racking up. So yeah, very interesting topics that people have talked about, and it's fantastic as always to see Indonesia and the long-term planning that goes into and the government responses to any situation with that climate change or economic recovery. So thanks for the opportunity. I'd like to join the questions.
Thank you, Pak Rob. Yeah, I think you touch upon a very great point where you said even experts that are not coming from the climate change world are actually linking those two aspects of climate change and recovery within one sentence right now, with lots of very tangible recommendations, including a greater focus on natural capital investment, which is great to hear. Now, so the top questions that gets 23 votes from everyone that attended is coming from Grace still. She is still the reigning champion. So hi, Grace, from all the way from the UK. This is a question for Pak Medril and Pak Adi. So given the fact that Indonesia has recently become an upper middle income country, and therefore the foreign aid that's coming is reduced, how ready and crucial is the national capacity of Indonesian government in correlating those two conditions with the low carbon development initiative of Indonesia that Pak Medril presented? Which one should we prioritize as a country? Whether it's national finance along with private or communities' financial resources or foreign development aid? So this is the first question to Pak Medril and Pak Adi. Maybe if you can take 2 or 3 minutes to answer this one, and then we'll go through the rest of the questions.
Will I start first or Pak Adi?
But yeah, sure. Pak Medril, you can start, and then we continue to Pak Adi.
All right. Thank you, Bu Gracia. This question is actually a super question for me. And I think if you read our RPGMN, in RPGMN, actually, we mentioned very clearly that we have at least two development constraints that we have to anticipate. The first one is, of course, fiscal constraint, and the second one, and actually the carrying capacity constraints. It has already clearly identified there. And the question actually relate to our fiscal capacity constraints, because we know that certainly we don't have any capacity to cover all required investments for low carbon development programs. So as Bu Kuki mentioned earlier, that certainly we have to work as well together with the private sectors, with the communities, and also international communities as well, to join together to support our low carbon development programs. And certainly in the futures, in the long run, low carbon development is actually the main options for us if we want to see that our economy actually continue in a good growth. Actually, we have already done our exercise, and we know that we have to admit that if we continue our business as usual development as of today, so then we will see that our economic development actually will not go through as what we have already dreamed in Indonesian Vision 2045. So actually we have, this is not, we have to do this actually start from now. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for our country then to catch up the challenge, the crisis that we are going to face, and so on. So in this case, again, to answer these questions, certainly combinations of the international supports, private investments, and also supported by our government's funding, although this is still very limited. So then we can work together to achieve all the targets that we have already set. Not only just in 5 years, but also up to 2030 as milestone by Paris agreements, and also by in 2045 as set in our Indonesian Vision 2045. Thank you.
So it's not an option. It's more like a parallel effort in all of the cylinder, yeah? Firing in all cylinders. Okay, thank you, Pak Medril. Pak Adi, do you want to add on to that? And do you have a priority if we have to choose between foreign aid versus any other financial resources? I know you mentioned a lot of the options right now.
Yeah, thank you so much. First, I think with the Indonesia become upper middle income country, we should regard this as an opportunity. Yeah, come out from the middle income trap, and this is leading towards Indonesia as become one of the biggest economy in the world. Currently, we are already in the 16th of the biggest economy, leading towards more less than 10, probably 7 or even 4 biggest economy in the world with the strength of the people and also all of the potential of Indonesia. The second, with regard to the financing of the low carbon economy, I would like to regard this as part of our journey to commit of NDC, because NDC has been already covered most of 5 key areas, which is including also forestry, agriculture, waste management, etc. And energy is one of the most important or significant quantum leap that we should support. And the gap is already really big because the government currently committed to expand a bit commitment to providing more budget from within, from the national budget and national and local level. But the gap is still really big for Indonesian potential to collaborate with the foreign, which is mostly come from the loan, from the sukuk, which is go to the market, and then also the collaboration with the GCF and other philanthropists. So now we move to various channel, and that means Indonesia has been ready to tap more opportunity with the collaboration with all of the stakeholders. The last but not least, I would like to also emphasize that Indonesia currently we have Indonesian aid. No, Indonesia is not only receiving loan or receiving, grants. Now Indonesia has been committed to develop Indonesian aid, and it's been launched by the Minister of Finance and the Foreign Minister. Now to come to the more towards operational and ready to support even not only within the country but also other countries as well. Thank you.
So this is us actually acting as a foreign support for other countries here, Pak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. I'm actually curious a little bit about your thoughts, because you mentioned that we should look at this as an opportunity. But what about the aspiring middle class that's sort of stuck in the middle? Do you think we have a risk of actually falling back into outside of the middle income country status because of the amount of aspiring middle class that we have?
Yeah, looking back to the current number, Indonesia is really huge potential with the demographic dividend. But the problem is on the literacy in terms of the climate change and also the financial literacy as well. So now we're working closely with all of the key stakeholders, not only key stakeholders, but we would like to work with the youth, the youth community. So then how to encourage more, creative and collaborative actions from within, from most of the currently millennials, I think one of the key players in the future for the climate actions and also digitalization business, facing the COVID-19 pandemic. I think it's really important, and it is a must for all of us to share and spread, strengthen the capacity from within and from the people. Yeah.
Thank you, Pak Adi. That is resonating so well with what Rob mentioned in terms of investing also in human resource development and education. Going to the second question, and this is maybe I'd like to give the floor to John, and then maybe other panelists can also comment on that, because you mentioned a lot of potential on blue carbon, and Indonesia have a big contribution when it comes to ocean water and ecosystem, and also coming from carbon absorption rate in terms of looking at the 3 coastal main habitats, coral reefs, seaweed, and mangrove. This is from one of the practitioners in Gorontalo in East Indonesia. So he is a sustainable tourism practitioner, Arianto Hussein. What do you think is the future for a country like Indonesia when it comes to the blue carbon scenario? And maybe later on, Pak Medril wants to add on, or Mbak Kuki wants to add on to this.
Yeah, look, it's very significant. If I may first perhaps respond to the that last discussion, because I think it is it's a very delicate question for Indonesia as to how you will move forward. But I encourage that sense of opportunity, and I think the way in which we actually can combine the COVID and climate recovery efforts and building carbon markets and assurance systems and good information for all stakeholders, and ranging from the indigenous communities right through to the broader communities, to make sure they happen with integrity, through to more to the sophisticated assurance systems that you might need for proper registries and certifying emission reductions. All of those will help build a bigger and more diverse economy that can really unleash the huge potential that Indonesia has. Now, Indonesia, of course, is an archipelago country with many, many islands. I'm not quite sure the count. I mean, when I was in Fiji, it was 300 islands. I'm sure you measure in the thousands, have massive stretches.
Almost 14,000 formally recognized islands.
Yeah, there we go. Obviously, massive stretches of mangrove and seagrasses, which play important roles in climate resilience as well, and public health as well, in terms of buffering shocks there. So there's massive opportunities there, and great opportunity for Australia to work as a blue carbon partnership. But the key test, and we're trying to develop these here in Australia right now, perhaps very frustratingly slow for some of our developers and investors who are very keen to get this going, to develop a methodology for blue carbon. We don't yet have one proved up within the domestic trading scheme. We are looking at ways in which we can recover wetlands from that were previously cleared for cane, and how we can actually get mangrove regrowth and properly measured. Australia and Indonesia can work together on making the assurance and providing the science and the data that can back those systems. But we can also do some pilot projects. Australia can invest, I think, to develop some pilot projects and work with other NGOs who are working in this area to prove up opportunities there. So there's lots of ways in which we can take hold of this opportunity. The estimates that some of those fields can have 40 times store 40 more times carbon than some rainforests. So massive potential.
So one of the two keywords that I picked up from your last part was investing on data and the science behind it, so that it becomes credible product coming from the country. But Kuki, do you want to add on to that, and probably add on a little bit, because there's also a question that relates to why are we moving on to other target while we actually have the NAMA before the NDC?
Okay, I think I agree with what John mentioned earlier. Our issue with this ocean or blue carbon is basically more on the data and methodology, because we haven't had that. I see Pa Medril nodding, because yes, the potential is big, and everyone cannot deny that. But once we are putting it into, let's say, if we are putting it into our NDC, for example, or if we put it into the international carbon market, then we have to be responsible, and we have to be able to show that what we are basically committing is something that can be transparently, the accounting and all the relevant issues on that, because it has a lot to do with the amount of money coming in, right? So we have to be sure about that as well. And I think on the last issue that you mentioned, Gita, about the target, we are talking about two different issues. Our NAMA is something that we commit voluntarily. So it was voluntary commitment by Indonesia, and it was done for the period up to end of 2020. Mm-hmm. So NAMA will be until the end of this year.
Have you achieved the target for NAMA, Kuki?
Pak Medril has the data. I remember.
I will shift to Pak Medril.
Yeah, I think it's we almost, like, for last year or the year before, we already achieved 23% or something out of 26. So we have, like, maybe this 3% will be reached by the end of this year as well. But first of all, we are talking about two different targets within two different periods and within two different international regime, if I can say. The NDC is something that we committed for 2021 to 2030. So NDC is basically the next step after the NAMA.
Okay,
right?
This is a follow-up from the NAMAs,
yes,
yeah?
Yes. So the NAMA is 26% for 2020, and our NDC is 29% for 2030. But it's also, it doesn't mean only 3% different. It's not that within 10 years we only reach 3%, because what we are talking about is the percentage from our business as usual scenario, which is increasing, like it's not a linear increase, right? So there will be more than just 3%.
Bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu.
It sounds that, sorry. Okay, so it sounds that only 3%, but it's not. It's way beyond 3%. So, and the reason why, because we have to be part of the Paris Agreement. We we have to be, as a party to the Paris Agreement, we have to commit something, and this is what we see possible to be achieved. I know that Pak Medril and his team is the one that working on the number at the very beginning. So
all right,
maybe you should go to Pak Medril now.
Yes, I will. Just to give Pak Medril a little bit of a break. So Pak Medril, actually, just to follow up on that, and I will go to Pak Adi later on. There's a so first the NAMAS question, right? Whether we've achieved it or not. But secondly, there's several of questions that are highly related with the sector. So in terms of energy, for example, are we directing enough attention to the energy mix target by 2025 and 2050, the energy mix percentage? And also, is there any potential priority on sustainable landscape management? Because part of the priority projects that you presented, especially on the green fuel area, is quite related to that. So time and floor is yours, Pak Medril.
Yeah, thank you, Mbak Gita. I think I continue what Bu Kuki has already explained with regards to the NAMAS, actually. Bu Kuki pointed out very good, very right about the stages that we have already had from 2010 to 2019, and also from 2020, and then from 21 to 30 actually. And NAMAS is actually can be classified as to reach the target up to 2020. And as Bu Kuki already mentioned that, as I also mentioned in the beginning in my presentations, that the potential emission reduction that we have already achieved in our record in 2019 as a cumulative figures is about 23%. And we believe that this figure is much actually this is underestimate figures, because we still do not consider the emission reductions that resulted from the private activities. All records that I have already mentioned, this is just government contributions. And I believe if we could include the potential emission reductions produced by the private sectors, of course, this number will be higher. And so this is also in line with the question related to the energy sectors. And we know that we still very far behind in terms of reaching our energy mix targets. We know our issues with regards to pricing and so on. And also we know our issues with regards to the competitions between fossil fuel and also the renewable energy. But as we know as well that our commitment now is very strong to push the renewable energy contributions to the emission reductions. And I think you are aware that now we also commit to produce the B30 and also D100, and all those measures actually to support, to improve our energy mix figures to reach the RUAN targets.
Yeah.
And with regards to the blue carbon issues, I think because I have a very limited time to present, actually, low carbon development initiative is not only about terrestrial activities or landscape activities, but we also include blue carbon initiatives as well as part of our low carbon development initiatives. But as Bu Kuki mentions, we have to be very, very careful including this blue carbon, because we have a very limited data, and also we have a very limited methods to measure this contribution from the blue carbon. Actually, we are now consolidating ourselves to improve the data management, including the mapping, where actually the mangroves area, where actually the degradations occurs, and so on and so forth. So so please be patient with regards to blue carbons, because this is not an easy one as well, and people still actually look for what sort of best options to measure the emission reductions, and also where actually the target area that we have to cover, because when we have to implement this blue carbon, including mangroves restoration and so on, it has to be a very clean and clear area that we have to restore. So otherwise, this creates another complexity in terms of project implementations.
Pak Medril, just to push a little bit on that, again, the question from Arianto was very much focused on fisheries, the fishers angle, and especially the whale sharks, because he's coming from Gorontalo. Is there a way to sort of look at it from a more blue carbon perspective when it comes to fisheries, and especially conservation of significant species?
Yes, this is also an issue that we have to bring together between biodiversity issue and also climate change issue. We know that in our UNCBD, there is a big efforts now to align the efforts in climate change and also in CBD, including how then the conservation activities could relate to our climate initiatives. And of course, on the field, this has to be realized. And we know that we have several initiatives now to link between the biodiversity and also climate change. And this is now become emerging. And as you know, that we have already developed collaborations with German governments to address this issue. And certainly we need to see how then this linkage can be strengthened in the future.
Thank you, Pak. Hopefully, fingers crossed, biodiversity is also an important aspect for Indonesia. Oh, happy World Orangutan Day, everyone, also. It's a wonderful day to celebrate. Thank you, Pak Medril. I actually want to go to the next question that is going back to sort of the core component of why climate crisis needs to be everybody's, priority right now. Not only the scientists and not only the people that is coming from the climate change background. There's a question from Gracia Planita Agnidira. She's from AWS Indonesia, so the water stewardship. I know there's a big ties between Indonesia and Australia also on the water stewardship. And this is for all the panelists. So I'd like to ask Pak Rob and Pak Rahmat maybe to chime in on this. So water is actually the cross-cutting issue in the climate change mitigation and adaptation discussion. However, strengthening water management and practices, although very relevant for climate change adaptation strategy, is somehow also often overlooked, right? Does the government of Indonesia and the key financing actors already have a practical strategy on how to integrate water into their funding framework and to perform assurance that relates how, at the end of the day, if we try to prevent climate change and we try to adapt to the effect of climate change, this will help us all in terms of making sure that there's enough water for everyone. So maybe we'll invite Pak Rob actually to start on this. Hi, Rob. Do you want to start to chime in on the first part of how water is significant in terms of climate strategy? And then
sorry about that. Yeah, good to meet. Sorry. Yes, and it's difficult to comment on the Indonesian situation, but in Australia, as you would imagine, Australia, that water is one of the hot topics and continues to be one of the largest concerns that the Australian population has in terms of, climate change related concerns, bushfires being the other one, and disasters related to climate change being another one. So that really does drive the policy agenda for Australia and there's one of the things, I'm not sure whether it happens in Indonesia, is just the cross jurisdictional problems with water is one of the major things that we find in Australia. And given the nature of the Indonesian archipelago, the decentralized nature of water and supply, I'd imagine would be something quite significant in terms of addressing that as a generic problem. But in Australia, I think our policy responses are somewhat hampered or more exacerbated in terms of that cross-jurisdictional problems. We've got one of the major rivers going through Australia through 3 states, and arguably 4 if we take the boundary of that South Australia. So yeah, I think the climate change water nexus is vital in adaptation, and Australia is, struggling through governance issues, but despite those governance issues, it's one of the top priorities of government.
Thank you. Pak Medril, you want to comment on that?
Yes, basically water is also part of our low carbon development initiative and climate resilience programs. And if you read our RPGMN and also our strategic environmental assessment for our RPGMN, basically water issue is one of the big issues that we have to respond immediately. Why? Because in many areas, in particular in Java, Bali, and also Nusa Tenggara, we are already in a critical situations. There is a big water stress in all those regions, and this will continue and also spread out as well to other several regions, as like in North Sulawesi, Aceh, and so on, because of climate change issue. We have already we have a very good collaborations with our colleague in the MKG to develop our climate projections, and from these climate projections up to 2045 actually shows that climate variability in Indonesia is very high, and climate event climate event,
Go ahead. Extreme events, yeah.
Yeah, extreme events actually will be happening quite frequently in the future. So that's why then in our programs now, water is a very top priority to be tackled, and we are collaborating very closely with Ministry of Public Works and also Ministry of Health, Ministry of Fisheries to tackle this issue. It also Ministry of Ag as well. And just yesterday, we have a very good discussions with all line ministries to identify in what sort of, in where actually the locations that will be prioritized in particular to respond to water issues with regards to climate change. So basically this issue has been handled and it's part of our program now. And hopefully, well, let's see what sort of results through our intervention in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Medril. So rest assured, Mbak Agni, water is still a prominent issue, and this is something that is top priority also for Indonesia. Before we move to Pak Adi and Mbak Kuki, Pak John, do you have any insights in terms of linking the whole carbon market and investors' appetite to water-related pipeline?
Yeah. Thank you, and I'll have to leave after this. I'm sorry. Thank you for the opportunity, but I think there's definitely opportunities and a lot to learn from Australia. We're both good and bad in terms of how water markets can help and how we can manage these contributions and direct investments into the outcomes that we need. So I'd certainly encourage some good linkages there with Australia. But again, really just to highlight that it's important that you build those institutions for good markets, for good integrity, and I'll encourage you to push forward. I know your government is working on carbon pricing and on an Indonesian certified emission reduction unit, and we really look forward to working with you and many of the other panelists in future as we try and work out the arrangements that Cookie was talking about before about how do we do the corresponding adjustments so that we can encourage investment and the additional benefits in water, in biodiversity, in local communities as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, John.
Wahyu as well, once again.
Thank you, Wahyu. Thanks. Great to hear that there's also appetite to things that are quite tangible for community, including water and biodiversity. So take care. Have a good rest of the day. Now we go to Pak Adi. Pak Adi, if you want to chime in terms of actually not only to answer the questions of water, because we only have around 5 to 7 minutes left, but there are several questions that are related to funding allocation and how does the government of Indonesia select, like sort of pick and choose which one to prioritize in terms of disbursing financing, whether it's sector oriented or is it impact oriented, or how do you make that judgment?
First of all, in line with the biennial update report, Indonesia currently focus on the 5 key areas, which is first is forestry, the energy, the waste management, agriculture, and industry. So how to allocate that? Now we encourage all of the line ministries and even the local government to do the budget taking, commit on how much you have to spend for green project. For the green project, we also even provide incentives for the business. If you would like to develop, like for say, solar panel or some of the ideas that really transform the, and support the low carbon economy, we can give you a like discount for the tax rate, discount for the, excise that will be custom excise that will be imposed for the imported goods, capital goods to support the industry. The second in how to also elevate the role of the youth, the role of the local government. Remember, we have 75,000 islands, but we have also 75,000 villages. The fund currently transferred to the local village. Even now, the village or the Kepala Desa, for example, one of the Kepala Desa, actually they can run the small enterprise, something like that, that lead towards more empowerment of the women, the youth, and they can make money. They can run the business, and they can even provide jobs for them. The third, but not least, I think you mentioned already, the collaborative action is the one that we currently should, strongly support. Currently, Ministry of Finance and the government, we try to think about the providing foundation, the legal framework for carbon credit, and for EBT, the renewable energy support. So that means that we are targeting 23% of the energy efficiency, the low carbon efficiency economy in the Indonesia. So strongly, we kind of invite all of the key stakeholders, sit together, and let's project it out on how then we can approach that every single year, something like that. Our office is actually, we are also signifies the collaboration through Green Climate Fund, the Indonesia Capital One, SDGs, especially for the blended finance. And let's try to start, improve the literacy of the low carbon industry or its ecosystem on the climate change potential disaster, but also the potential for Indonesia to enter the carbon, not only the low carbon economy, but for the DRFA, we call it, disaster risk financing initiatives. That actually, we prevent, we support the industry, the finance industry, to be strengthen its role to provide even support, mitigate on potential risks associated with the climate change. Losing jobs, something like that. That's also in line with the COVID-19 action, the recovery economic support from the government. Now we're focusing on almost 40 until 60% of the people that directly impacted with COVID-19. But while we are doing this, I think we still now remember, look, we also need to prepare for another potential pandemic, or Professor Mitular already indicated, like even climate change is one of another sort of the pandemic that potentially, trigger a lot of cost here for Indonesia to handle this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pak. So going forward, it's a matter of strategic decision making, I guess. Not only to think about the 5 years ahead, but also until 2045, and we have to consider not only maybe double whammy, because right now even in local government, they're already battling with existing disasters like forest fire, peat fire, and other like floods, which is recurring while they're handling pandemic. So it's really happening, right? So Mbak Kuki, do you have any thoughts in terms of relating what is Pak Adi call it literacy on low carbon development so that everybody would have a sense, why should this be a priority for them as well? Because you're a long-term negotiator, you negotiate a lot of complicated things. How would you want to negotiate this to the general public?
Yeah, thanks so much, Gita. I think it's the most difficult task that I get. No, no, but I think as you already mentioned, what happened now, or maybe what Pak Adi referred as this issue of literacy is, we tend to see things that only in front of us, right? So, for example, if I can come back to the issue of water, usually if we are talking about water, we only see it like either water from the river, but sometimes we forget that we also have another issue for, let's say, small islands, for remote islands, for those outer islands that they small and they don't have any, let's say, fresh water or underground. So I think this is also another issue, Pak Medril. If we are talking about water, then we also need to think about desalination of seawater into fresh water, and I think this will help us a lot. And if we are talking about the climate change or the Paris Agreement issues, then coming into that outer islands or small islands with these desalination measures, then we will address the adaptation. We will have adaptation action. But at the same time, because then I would suggest that it will be desalination using solar PV, for example, rather than using diesel oil. Then we can also, do the calculation and put it as part of our NDC as well. So I think this is something that we need to start to see it beyond the mitigation or adaptation actions only. And I think, Gita, that is exactly what we need to do. And I think everyone here as well, we need to share whatever that we have on this issue, on the climate, on the SDGs, on the low carbon issue to others. Because as I mentioned earlier, quite a number of us just see things exactly what happened in front of us without looking at the longer perspective kind of thing. So this is I know that you with your LTKL really help the local government, for example, the district government, and this is something that we need to work together. I'm sure that Pak Medril and also Pak Adi and other ministries will need to work together with non-governmental organization like yours, and especially those that working at on the ground, real activities on the ground. I don't have any other thing to share, because that's the only thing that we can do at the moment. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mbak Kuki. Actually, that was already plenty in terms of communicating messaging. A couple of our districts, because we're a district association, not so much of an NGO, but we've been working with Pak Adi's ministry actually to do the budget tagging. So Gorontalo is one of your pilot district, which is great to allow them to have a more in-depth understanding of what low carbon development means. But actually, because we're on the top, almost at the top of the hour, and this is I think a good summary of the challenge ahead, not only to have a good strategy to implement our low carbon development strategy, but also we have to be able to communicate it so it becomes everybody's agenda. So I would like to actually give each of the speaker 1 minute to do your closing takeaways, and hopefully within the 1 minute you can also give a call to action to all of the participants, almost 700 participants in Zoom and in YouTube. What would be the one thing that you'd like the participants to do after finishing up this webinar? Well, of course, related to climate change, adaptation and mitigation efforts. So maybe we can start with Pak Adi.
Thank you so much. I just still focus on the BPDLH. I just have a question on the carbon market mechanism. I think now the government has all of the full, modalities and also instruments to run all of the potential financing and also support for green fund and also carbon market mechanism. The regulatory framework, we currently still build some of the key elements that currently work with line ministries directly related with it. And with Pak Medril, I do hope that we can engage the collaboration further, Pak Medril, to support the, we call it the financing gaps that currently we still have a huge, and also targeting or prioritizing some of the low-hanging fruit that we can reach towards the carbon, mechanism, but also to the low carbon economy or energy in terms of the energy transition to support the Indonesian efficient energy for PLN especially, and then also for the people as a whole that we currently leading towards more digital economy, and we'll also support that the Indonesia will become one of the potential contributors for example, like lithium, the battery, the B30 for the green fuel that Pak Medril already indicated. Indonesia have such a great potential, not only in 1 or 5 key areas that we currently have, but also with the great other potential with the people that I think more of the innovative and creative actions and policy potential can be developed based on the collaboration with all of the key stakeholders. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pak Adi. Mbak Kuki, you want to go next? 1 minute statement.
Okay, I'll try. I think from me, what is important for each of us, of course, to do actions by ourselves, right? There are many small actions that we can do, each of us. I know it's very, maybe it's very cliche, like to use energy efficiently, but it will help a lot with our issue on the energy security as well as on the greenhouse gases emission. And I think another issue is basically to share the story, to share the information that we got, to share the knowledge that we got with others, whoever, I mean, like at different level, be it the government officers, local government officers, or even others, our friends in our group. I think that's all.
Perfect. I was like 2 seconds left. Pak Rob, you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. I think as an academic, I can speak a little bit more freely, and I think our position on climate change and NDC in Australia is not terribly strong, but we do have other strengths in terms of what we commit to. I think leadership at the top is really important, and we do have all of the states, the next level down from the federal government, committing to a zero emissions target. That's one thing I think that is important for that leadership aspect. The other thing is when we think about multipliers and the initiatives that we want to have a response to the COVID-19, those multipliers, you can look up the tables to think of what activities will result in various economic activity, but co-benefits is really important in just common speak as to increasing multiplying effect of any recovery response. So I think that's a really important thing. And the other thing that COVID has taught us, particularly in Australia, it may be culturally relevant in Indonesia, is that the idea of competition when we are facing hardship is probably not the best ethic to have during these economic times. And collaboration and cooperation are much more important to think about how recovery can happen. And there's shifts in Australia along those lines in terms of a shift in culture of how we do business and how we do government. There are some shifts happening there. Some good signs, although there are some bad signs, but there are some good signs. So hopefully that's my minute. Thank you.
Great. Competition has no place. Great segue to Pak Medrilzam. Your 1 minute closing statement, Pak. What do you want all of us to do after this?
Okay, thank you, Kak Gita. And first, I would like to echo Bu Kuki's statement with regards to the to do just simple things first from ourselves. And there are a lot of measures that we can do with these simple things, such as segregation of the waste, and also don't put don't support the food loss and food waste programs. And there are many. That's the first one. And the second one, because this is we have a lot of people in education here in this forum. I would like to call to have more research on this climate or low carbon development issues, and link those research to improve our technology and also our policy exercise. And I think we are from the government really need support from the academics in this case. So of course we will be working together to improve all these conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Medril. So that was the closing statement from all of our panelists, some keywords there, and a lot of them have already typed in some answers to the questions that haven't been answered. We managed to go through around 15 questions in total, so congratulations, panelists. My 1 minute takeaway from this is I have this habit of making a little poem at the end of the session. So the poem is titled Finance, is FINANCE. So the F is for funding sources are available and there are many options. The I stands for investment appetite are there. So there's no other excuse. The N goes to national government can set long-term, but everybody have to chime in to support. The A stands for aspect of our low carbon development strategy needs to integrate terrestrial as well as ocean. The N stands for new innovation and R&D can be the way forward for strategic sector. But the C stands for community and stakeholders at local leadership can be our strong force. Thus, education access play a big part in the strategy. And the final E stands for exclusivity and competition has no place in climate crisis mitigation and adaptation effort. We have to go about it together. So that's my key takeaway. Hopefully this sums up the discussion nicely, and I'll give the floor back to Leah. Sorry for all of the mistake, and thank you for all of the panelists.
Thank you very much, Kak Gita. That is a wonderful sharing you have done. Beri tepuk tangan yang meriah, saudara-saudara. I love all the poems that you have made in the end of the session. And then I perhaps want to make one takeaway message as well that perhaps participants can help with that directly after this. I have shared the link to the recording of our 14 webinars in the chat box. So if you please open it, share it to your network. It can be your very first action for supporting our discussion on climate actions, and then also take a real action later on. So thank you very much for Kak Gita for the wonderful sharing, and of course, massive thank you for all the speakers here, Pak Medril, Pak Adi, John who has left, Mbak Kuki, and then also Rob who is still here. And Rob is actually the lead for our climate research. Pak Medril, you've mentioned about research. He is the lead for our research on the area of response measure and low carbon transition. So he and the team got some plan about like conducting more research involving more partners such as LTKL, and then other land ministries, and then also other universities as well. So hopefully we can follow that up from our discussion to have a more concrete actions later on. And then before I move on to other information, I would like to share the result of our polling, which is very interesting. We have a pretty good response. So can anyone in the Zoom see the polling result?
It's there.
Yes, and then I will share my screen because I have quickly put in it on the slide. So this is temporary, yeah? It's actually more than 424 response, but I just like make it like a few minutes ago, but then now I think it's more than 440 something. So yeah. Which sector do you most identify yourself with? Majority of you are academia, 38%, national government, 19%, local government, 8%, private sector, 8%, NGO, 9%, communities, 4%, internal organization, 6%, media, 1%, and others, 7%. It's a good range. In your opinion, to what extent should COVID recovery and low carbon development go hand in hand? 41% of you say they must be inextricably linked. 53% of you say they should be somewhat linked, but they are separate challenges. 7% say it is almost impossible to relate them. That's too distinct from each other. This is a question from John. And third question, Indonesia has high carbon abatement or sequestration potential in natural ecosystems. How can Indonesia further incentivize nature-based climate repair through its natural ecosystems? 58% say more stakeholder awareness raising, 23% say leveraging public-private partnership, 17% say minimizing regulatory and legislative barriers to investment, 3% say leveraging Australia-Indonesia partnership. And the next one, in your opinion, what are the key benefits of ecosystem restoration and protection? 20% say reduce emission, 26% say protect biodiversity, 18% say improve livelihoods, 4% say protect industries such as tourism and fisheries, 22% say improve resilience to climate impacts, 2% say protect industries such as tourism and fisheries, and 9% say economic reward that can be gained from all those activities. What do you think of Indonesia's effort to achieve the Paris Agreement and 2030 agenda? 23% doing good and on track. 78% need to be improved. This is a question from Bappenas. And then talking about the climate change agenda, who do you think needs to raise more effort in implementing low carbon development? 19% say industry, 17% say government, 5% say civil society, 4% say academic, 55% said all, majority of you said everybody. Okay. Number 7, this is a lot. Which development sector should be prioritized to be supported with low carbon finances? 27% forestry, 30% energy, 19% agriculture and plantation, 2% tourism, 0% F&B, maybe don't know what food and beverage, yeah. 6% say health, 3% say infrastructure, 2% say water use, 9% waste management, and 2% services. Funding for low carbon development will be effective if channeled and managed through 30% the government budget, 13% private sector, 12% civil society organizations, 22% development partners, 15% community groups, 9% others. And then the last question, I generally get information regarding funding options for low carbon development and its development through 11% say conventional media, 26% say social media, 9% say group online, and Indonesia is a massive culture here through WhatsApp, 17% say events and seminars, 18% say channels of relevant ministries or institutions. So I think it's really good to have a really good website for the ministries. And 14% that say networks such as colleagues, friends, family, and 6% said others. So that is all for our polling. Thank you very much for participating. We can share the result to our respective speakers so that maybe we can make a follow-up on that. So thank you again for everyone who's listening and joining until the end, and participants, you have been wonderful. I saw some of the regulars from all of you joining from the first webinar until now. Thank you so much for that. And I hope you have, you make some benefit out of our webinars, and hopefully we can follow that up with a real actions on the ground or real collaboration. Feel free to contact us, contact CAIPSDCC email or Handicast, and then maybe we can touch base and explore some collaboration. And this is our last webinar. We are going to take a break for several weeks because next week we are going to do a close dialogue for climate diplomacy, but then we will be back in September for a bigger climate diplomacy talk, and perhaps a collaboration with LDKL. Who knows, right? We're still exploring. And maybe other, Pak Medril, Pak Adi, we're open for that, Mbak Kuki. So yeah, so thank you again. And then before I close the session, Pak Rahmat has been in line to give his heartwarming closing remarks. Pak Rahmat, you still there, right? Bapak, over to you. Yes.
Yeah. Hello. Hi. I've been following the discussions. Very interesting and very educative. I've only a few things to say. First of all, certainly, is my thanks and appreciation to all the participants, in particular to our friends, Rob from Australia, and our two experts, Adi and Medrilzam, but most of all the three angels, Leah, Gita, and Cookie. I just want to express my appreciation that we can handle this very complex and difficult problem to step forward. And I hope that we will continue doing so. I'm happy that the CAIPSDCC can function as a collecting point for all this. Thank you, everyone, and bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Rahmat. So yeah, and then ladies and gentlemen, by that, I think we can close this webinar. It's more than 2 hours. We're sorry for that, but hopefully it's okay because we have a lot of speakers giving a really great insights. And then thank you again for all your time and energy, and see you all next time. And for the participants who would like to request information about materials and the certificates, Handika after this will take it over and then give more information on that. So by that, I'm Leah Zakia, the program coordinator of CAIPSDCC. Very sorry if I said something that is offending or like you know, not really get into your hub, but like yeah, I'm here representing the CAIPSDCC, and hopefully we can do more collaboration moving forward. So thank you again and see you on September. Bye. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Terima
Thank
kasih.
you.
Ya, makasih Mbak Kuki, Pak Medril, Pak Adi, Kak Gita.
Thank you, Kalia, for the amazing organizing, as always.
Merdeka.
Dirgahayu, selamat Hari Orang Hutan.
Selamat Hari Orang Hutan juga.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Terima kasih banyak Bapak Ibu yang sudah bergabung pada webinar hari ini. Bapak Ibu semuanya, sekali lagi saya ucapkan terima kasih banyak sudah bergabung pada webinar hari ini. To all dear sirs and madam, once again I would like to thank you all for joining us in this webinar today. This room will be closed soon and hope you have a nice day. Thank you and hope to see you again in another CAIPSDCC events and maybe another webinar.